The second worst piece of news that Issa Diop had on the day that we played Southampton was that he'd been overlooked for first team selection in favour of what is really a player on loan, a journeyman centre-half at the end of his career. Not great, really, when you've cost 23 million quid and you were seen as being the future. The worst piece of news that Issa Diop had on that day was that Craig Dawson went into that team and played better than Issa Diop would have done. Hearsay, supposition, guesswork, maybe. But I think I'm probably on relatively solid ground when I say that Issa Diop had shown no evidence during recent times that he was going to go into that game against Southampton and get the Man of the Match award, which is exactly what Craig Dawson did. Because that has quite big implications for Diop. Initially, and how the mighty have fallen. Initially, when David Moyes came back in, Issa Diop was the chosen one. Chosen to play alongside Angelo Ogbonna in a back four. And certainly when we played with a back three, he was one of the three centre-halves. Aaron Cresswell, Angelo Ogbonna and Issa Diop. COVID came along. He got the sniffles or whatever. I underplay it slightly, granted. But he got ill, himself, Josh Cullen, and I think David Moyes at the same time, if memory serves me correctly. And then that was it. He couldn't get back in the team. It was actually Fabian Balbuena who came back in, who I thought had been out of favour with David Moyes. And he sort of hasn't looked back since. Now, we've since found out against Southampton what happened when Issa Diop, when Fabian Balbuena was injured. Did he call on Issa Diop? Because that's what you would expect to have happened. No. He put Dawson in the team. That's really telling. I really do. I think the wider implications for that are huge. But it got me thinking. Because I said when I heard the news that I wouldn't be surprised at all if on that morning, the very next morning afterwards, Issa Diop was handing a transfer request. Because, let's be fair, his West Ham future does not look rosy at all. But it made me think, why do we always seem to get these transfers so badly wrong? Now, it's not like he hasn't been a success. It's not like he has completely flopped since the time we bought him. But it is another example of us, I think, depreciating a player's value. This is nothing new, but the big ones, the whoppers, are now. Because if we had to get rid of Issa Diop now, would we get our £23 million back? Well, we'd be doing very well if we did. I suspect not. But this is probably small fry compared to some of the bigger stories, which are Felipe Anderson and Sebastien Haller. And it gives a worrying indication of what the philosophy is in terms of buying and selling at the football club. How you can run a multi-million pounds industry, football club, business, whatever you want to call it, and constantly buy assets whose value depreciate. Now, I'll leave you to guess what we'd get for Diop, but I don't think it'd be 23 million. I would imagine if somebody came in with 15 now, David Moyes would probably think, I can use that 15, I could do something with that. Then we look at Sebastien Haller and we look at the bit of a pickle, really, that we seem to be in with that. Is Sebastien Haller worth the 42 million? We've already discussed this already this week. It's a no. It's rumoured that he's going to play out the rest of the season at West Ham, and then we're going to look to do a deal with a Bundesliga outfit for 25 million quid. Wow. I mean, that's a drop. And if you think that's too low, just ask yourself in your mind, not what you think he should be worth or what we should be getting. Ask yourself in your own mind what you think another club would offer for Sebastien Haller. Do you think anybody's coming in and paying £35 million for him? No. So, at the very least, his value was depreciated by 10 million, 25%, a quarter, and that is being conservative. I would not be surprised if his value was halved, almost halved. You can't keep taking these financial hits as a football club. And then we get to the tale of Felipe Anderson. I can't remember Porto's last two games. One of them was Benfica. I can't remember the other one. I'll tell you now. Felipe Anderson has not even been on the bench. And they've done well, by the way. I think they beat Benfica 2-0 and they won the other game 3-2. They're winning very nicely without him. The irony is, old Tony Martinez is on the bench for Porto, but Felipe Anderson isn't. By the way, Tony Fernandes is another player that we spent £2.7 million on and let go for nothing. What's Felipe Anderson's worth now? I think by the time we've paid up all the instalments, the cost of Felipe Anderson is around 35 million quid. Would we get that back? No. The whole idea of a loan, well, I guess there's two ideas of a loan. Number one, you get the wages. You get it off the wage bill. 100 grand a week, whatever he's on. You don't have to pay that. That's great. But really, the advantage, it should hopefully benefit both clubs. It should benefit Porto because they get a winger, a £35 million winger, which probably they can't afford. And they get a player for the season. For West Ham, it benefits us. He's not going to feature in our first team, but hopefully, we hope that it increases his value. Porto, we hope, play European football, do well. Felipe Anderson does well. The asset returns back to West Ham. Either Porto buy him for close to the 35 million, or we can then sell him on to another club who have been watching and thinking, oh, there's a tricky Brazilian winger there. Well, it's not worked out like that. It's not worked out for Felipe Anderson, not worked out for Porto, not worked out for West Ham. I don't think it would be beyond reason to suggest that actually his value has dropped even more. And it was pretty low. It was pretty low. When we sent him out loan to Porto, his value was really low. I think it's dropped. I don't know what you'd get for Felipe Anderson, but would 15 million sound reasonable to you? You're going to have to make up your own mind because this is all guesswork now. But whatever it is, again, I think it's fair to say his value has dropped by half. So we're looking at Diop, we're looking at Anderson, we're looking at Haller. Look, I know these all came in under Pellegrini. And yes, look, he's going to get a lot of stick for this. But it doesn't just happen under him. It's just more stark. It's just more pronounced. It's more obvious with Pellegrini's reign. Why? Because he spent big money. We've done it an awful lot. David Moyes been guilty of it, by the way. Jordan Hugo, 9 million quid. What did we get rid of him for? 4? Something like that. Even poor old Sam Byram, if you remember. Did buy him for 5, 6 million? I think we got rid of him to Norwich. Barely played for us. Got rid of him to Norwich. 750,000. He started playing games for Norwich in the Premier League. It's crazy. It's just crazy the way we waste money. Jetty is another example. 7, 8 million. Sold to Celtic for 4. It's madness. Even the players that we made a profit on. You could look at it. Actually, believe it or not, we made a profit on Dimitri Payet. But it doesn't tell the whole story. We were forced to sell. And at the time we sold him, I think he was second only in the Premier League to Riyad Mahrez in terms of creative players. We ended up letting one of the best players in the league, a world-class player, I think it's fair to say, go for 25 million quid. There wasn't even any advantage just doing that. Arnautovic came in. What did he buy him for, Stoke? 21 million? Selling for 22.5 after he kicked off, having given him an increased contract. It's absolutely crazy. I just go back to the Felipe Anderson one. I think if Felipe Anderson now, he would cost us something in the region of, including wages and wasted transfer fee, that could end up costing West Ham 65 million quid or something like that. This is absolutely ridiculous. Where is the strategy? Where is the planning in all of this? And why does this keep happening? We're gonna, as I say, we'll look into Ben Rama once we know a little bit more. So we'll wait until after the Everton game and see if he gets a start then. But there's another conversation to be had there anyway. But it's something Gio said to me, which was on Ben Rama. He said Moyes and David Sutherland probably their heads banging together. Sort it out. There's, as a player, there's something to be done. There's something to be sorted out then. And I think this is the case. Obviously, the common denominator here is obviously David Sullivan and all the rest of it. You would think that with Pellegrini, that's certainly the case, and now with David Moyes. There's a reticence from David Moyes to play certain players, and their value absolutely plummets. And we're seeing it with Haller. I'm not overly blaming Moyes for it. I think Haller needs to do a lot more for himself, by the way. We're seeing it with Felipe Anderson, and now we're seeing it with Issa Diop. But look, Moyes had to do what he had to do to get the result in that game. And if David Moyes felt that Craig Dawson was a better option than Issa Diop against Southampton, then he's got to pick the best team at his disposal. And I think he probably can look back at that and say, there you go, I was right. I was right to pick Dawson ahead of Diop. I think reluctantly, a lot of us almost have to agree Because it is the truth. I don't actually want it to be the truth. I want Issa Diop to be better than Dawson. But it's not happened. So what's happening to these players? Why are these players being allowed to wither on the vine? Their values depreciating. What happens with Issa Diop now? I've seen a couple of rumours today that Liverpool might be interested, or this, that and the other. You would expect rumours. I expect these things to surface because you know when a player is unhappy, these rumours start to circulate. The fact that the Haller rumours are starting to circulate now not only show that he's unhappy, but they show that everyone else has noticed. Because realistically, if you didn't know a lot about West Ham, you'd just look at the team sheet and think, oh, well, Sebastien Haller plays every game at the moment. What's he played? Last 6-7 games? But it's obviously blindingly obvious that something's not right, that other teams feel that they can come in and make these loan bids. Now, part of that may well be, it's just so blindingly obvious what's going on at West Ham. Some of it may well be West Ham sending agents and trying to pimp him out to try and get him moved on to another club. Some of it may well be Sebastien Haller's agent or Sebastien Haller himself. But it ain't good when opposition clubs are looking in, thinking, "Oh, hold on, there's rich pickings at West Ham. We can go and get a player on the cheap at West Ham United because West Ham United keep buying these highly priced assets and paying big money for them. They're stock dips. We can go and grab ourselves a bargain." It ain't a good look at all. So what happens with these players? What happens with Felipe Anderson? What happens with Sebastien Haller? More pertinently, what happens with Issa Diop? Because you look at it now and you think he must have very, very little future at West Ham. How is his motivation now? I think a lot of players can probably take not being first choice and being dropped. But I think they're not being sort of second choice or third choice or fourth choice. It ain't particularly good for your ego. It's not really good for your well-being at the club. David Moyes could say all the words he needed to. I mean, the backroom staff could be trying to G Issa Diop up, but Issa Diop will know now he's not particularly wanted at West Ham. And there's a little funny one actually with West Ham because, as I understand it, and certainly the pictures you see from the training ground reveal this to be true, Issa Diop, Sebastien Haller, and Arthur Masuaku are all very, very close. I know they all play for different countries, but they're all French, basically. They're all French. They're all born and brought up certainly raised in France, all speak French, and they're all great mates. Well, two of those had their nose put out of joint. One of them wants to leave, Sebastien Haller, and it's not like Sebastien Haller's had his chance, and you feel it's not worked out for all the reasons we've discussed on this channel numerous times. I think the dynamic with Issa Diop is slightly different. The dynamic with Issa Diop is, I don't feel he's done an awful lot wrong. I don't look at Issa Diop and think, oh mate, you screwed it up for yourself. I thought Issa Diop was going along quite nicely, really. Got coronavirus. Since then, he's lost favour with the clubs. You used to hear this about Bill Shankly at Liverpool. Maybe it's Bill Shankly, maybe it's Brian Clough, whatever. But apparently if you were injured, the manager wouldn't even speak to you. You'd lost favour with the manager. You were a hindrance, you were an annoyance. And you sort of do wonder whether David Moyes is... I don't think David Moyes is a nice guy. I think he's a nice guy. He's done lots for the community, and we know all this. But I do wonder how well David Moyes can mask his annoyance and his irritation. Because if he's got the he's got the I remember something he said about a jetty. He came in a jetty, didn't even know who a jetty was. It was quite clear he wanted a jetty to leave straight away. I don't think he sees Issa Diop as a disruptive influence. I really don't. There was a time when he liked Issa Diop, but it's just another example of us getting to a situation with a player where the club don't help themselves. Is David Moyes all to blame for this? No. But because it keeps happening, it's happened. Haksabanovic was another one. But we bought him for 3.7 million as part of the Arnautovic deal as well, because they had the same agent. I mean, come on. What's going on here? Well, I think he went away. You can't keep losing. Even it's not just the big money. It's 3.7 million for Haksabanovic. It's 2.7 million for Tony Martinez. It's losing 3 million on Chicharito. Losing 2 million on Perez. We bring Perez in for 4 million, sell him for 2. 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. there's an old saying, isn't there? Take care of the pennies and the pounds take care of themselves. Well, you know what? The millions add up into tens of millions eventually. And it can't keep going on. So something has to be done. And I think it's the lack of a cohesive transfer strategy, the lack of a director of football, and the lack of some continuity in terms of the club planning. But that being said, and I do think the majority of the blame lies there, there is a responsibility on David Moyes to try and keep these players' values up, to try and keep these players interested, because at some point he's going to need them. And if nothing else, it is advantageous to David Moyes to have a player whose value is high and is a good asset, because at the end of the day, at some point, David Moyes is going to want to sell them. And it's far better for David Moyes, who wants to reinvest the money from these players, to have an Issa Diop that's worth 23, 30 million, and get that money and sell it and put that into his next transfer, than it is to have an Issa Diop who's basically gets a loan for 6 months, and then we sell him for 12 million quid.